So I think as you get older, you realize that you want to simplify your life a lot more and you want to structure in such a way that sort of things just happen for you. So when you're younger, right? So, maybe you're 16 to 25 years old. You think that you could sort of change the world and that you can really have an impact, and you definitely can. Like, I'm not saying that you can't in any sort of way, but a key part of that is realizing that you can't change everything about the world, and you sort of pick and choose what you want to do. And you know before, what you tend to do and want to do is that you're sold a bill of goods basically by culture, that hey, if you do stock picking, for example, that you can sort of get ahead if you could pick the right possible stock, the right possible combination of investing, that you'll become wealthy and rich and all of that kind of stuff, which ultimately you realize as you get older that's not true. There's no basis behind that. If you start studying this kind of stuff and you study how business actually works and how investing actually works, you realize that, you know what, you don't have to do any of that kind of stuff and do just as good as everybody else, if not better. Um, and so you begin to structure your life in such a way that you simplify it. So one of the benefits, the reason why I stress getting things like index funds, for example, or really broad base, long-term mutual funds that have been around for a long time and that they have a really proven track record, um, is because it just simplifies your life. You don't have to worry about picking the right stock. You don't have to look at anything any given day. There is no sort of wheeling and dealing and panicking about how things happen. And the more that you realize that there's some beauty in that, where if you just invest every day, you just put your money into, S&P 500 index funds, which is all of the companies that are on the stock market, or roughly all of them, the top 500 of them, or something like that, where you are just investing broadly, um, and you don't care. You just do it every day. In every paycheck, there's a little bit of money that goes out and gets put into these investments. I recommend 10 to 20%, but what we do, our family does, is at least 15%. Um, and what you do is you get up and it goes in. You don't even worry about it. I don't even know. I don't set anything up. I don't care. I set it up once. I kind of did it once, and then it just goes in. And every year it goes up. And every year the stock market might go up a little bit one year, and then it goes down a little bit another year, but then it goes up a little bit more, and it keeps doing that. And every year when something happens, like right now, um, we don't really panic. It's a small part of what's going on in our life. And all of the sort of downturn that's happening in the stock market and this what they call uncertainty, or volatility, right? Goes up and goes down, goes up, goes down. You don't care. Um, Ultimately, because you're not worried about it, because what you're looking at isn't in the very long run. And if you buy enough of it, diversified across many different things, and in the long run, it typically goes up. And there might be in a country that might implode in on itself, like we're seeing this year in 2022. I won't name that country, but you probably know which one I'm talking about. Um, and it might implode, and then you know what? You don't worry about it, because every single year it's going to go up. There's been many other instances over the years that have imploded. There's been world wars that have been fought, and those index funds and mutual funds broadly have gone up every year. Every single year it goes up. Every single year, sometimes some years it goes up, some years it goes down, but generally it goes up a little bit by little bit by little bit. And if you have that sort of perspective, that you're just thinking about how things just gradually go up over time, and you're not worrying about, in fact, the short term is a decade, but you're worrying in the short term having something happen, that is going to benefit you. The short term is a decade. And where you're really looking at is in 30 years, how can I position myself so that things will be okay? And if you have that mindset, doesn't matter how old you are, if you're 50 and you're thinking until you're 80, if you're 60, you should be thinking that, yeah, hey, you're going to be there until you're 90, right? And if you're having that long-term perspective and you're sort of reducing all of the stress in your life by just playing just basic statistics in aggregate, right? Like you're thinking about the long term, you're thinking about sort of how things basically happen. You don't worry about all the stuff that happens in the near term. All of that stuff, it is a worry, but it's not necessarily a big worry, right? You think about like, man, this is crazy. All of this stuff is absolutely crazy. But next year there'll be another crazy thing that'll happen. And next year there'll be another crazy thing will happen. And yet miraculously things go up. Things can keep doing a little better, a little better, a little better. And that's what you have to think about is how do you manage yourself so that you're not gambling, you're not thinking about the short term or something is going to miraculously make you a ton of money or make you very successful in the short term, but you're betting on the long term where things just kind of gradually, slowly, every little year goes up a little bit. They give you a rough estimate on average, the S&P 500. So this is all of the top 500 companies in the stock market right now. I can't remember which one. I believe it's the NASDAQ stock market or the New York Stock Exchange. I can't remember which one they choose, but one of them, and they go up by roughly 10%. You know, and if you think about that, you might think like that's an amazing return, right? Like people talk about an amazing return being 10%, but if you think about it, that is amazingly slow. So 1 year that will be so from this year things will be if you're making $10 this year, you're going to be making $11 next year. And if you look at that in over 2 years, if you think about, hey, I'm making $11, that seems really slow and seems really pathetic, and it doesn't seem like you're getting anywhere over 2 years. I mean, 2 years is a long time in human years, right? Like if you think about how things happen, but in the in the long run, in terms of playing what I'm suggesting, it's really short. But 2 years feels really, really painful when you're in the moment. Now, over the course of 3 years, you're going to be making $12. $12 and change, a little bit more, a little bit more. And that doesn't seem like 3 years is a long time. Now, 4 years, it's the same thing. You might be making, $13.50 at this point. Doesn't seem like a lot. So what I'm getting at is the change is very gradual, and over the course of a little bit, it doesn't feel like a lot. Right? It never feels like a lot over the course of 5, 10, even 15 years. But by the time you reach 20 years of doing this, you look back and you're like, holy cow, I've come a long ways. And that's where I want you to be thinking about is playing the long-term game, thinking about how things will gradually slow. Now remember that 10% that I'm telling you about, that is the top companies that we know of that are publicly traded. They're growing at that rate. So on average, it's actually lower than that if you take it across the board. So just, assume that things will take a time. And as you assume that things take time and you go slowly and you keep taking those steps every single year, and every year you're going to get burnt. There's going to be something that will happen, and it will be a major crisis in your life temporarily. But you just keep going. You take those steps forward one day at a time. And, you look back after doing that for 20 years, you've actually done a lot and you made a big, significant difference. And that's what I want you to remember. It's not about what happens this year. It's not what happens over the next 5 years or 10 years. It's what happens over 20, 30, 40 years of doing good things. And I want you to think about that. Reduce the amount of chaos in your life by doing simple things that you know are actually really proven, and just keep doing that day in and day out. All right, take care. and have a wonderful day.